Ladies and gentlemen, friends and seekers of peace. Today I want to share with you something truly powerful, something that can transform our lives in ways we never imagined. It's a practice that has been around for centuries, yet its relevance is timeless. I'm talking about fasting, the act of surrendering our physical needs in pursuit of something greater, our spiritual nourishment. Fasting is not about hunger. It's about connection. It's about creating space in the most profound way possible for God to enter our lives. You see, when we fast, we are offering up a part of ourselves, humbling ourselves in the most intimate way. We are saying, I trust that my spirit is more important than my body. And I believe that in this moment of sacrifice, I can draw closer to you. When we fast, we are making a conscious choice to let go of distractions. We give up the familiar comforts of our world, the things that usually demand our attention, the noise that keeps us from hearing the whispers of our soul. And in doing so, we make room for God's voice to be heard. But fasting is more than just an act of discipline. It's a sacred invitation, an invitation to be present in God's presence. Just like when we clear out our homes to make space for something new, fasting clears our minds and hearts, making room for God's love to pour in. Now, fasting isn't just a solo experience. It opens our eyes to the struggles of others. When we fast, we are reminded of the less fortunate, the ones who go hungry not by choice but by circumstance. It's in this space that we cultivate compassion. We see the world through a lens of empathy, kindness, and love. And isn't that what God calls us to do? Show love and care for others as we would for ourselves. And the rewards of fasting, they are not just physical. The rewards are spiritual, they are profound, and they are infinite. When we fast, we don't just empty ourselves, we allow God to fill us. We gain wisdom. We gain clarity. We grow in grace and understanding, and we grow closer to the divine. So why does fasting attract God? Because in fasting, we create space to listen, space to feel, space to grow. We open our hearts and our souls to Him in ways that nothing else can. And that is when we find the blessings, we seek the peace, the clarity, the love. Let us embrace fasting not just as a ritual, but as an invitation to transform, to connect, and to draw nearer to God. In this beautiful practice, we find ourselves. And in finding ourselves, we find God. Fasting is often seen merely as a physical practice, something that involves abstaining from food or certain pleasures for a set period of time. But in its essence, fasting is so much more. It is a powerful, transformative journey that goes far beyond the simple act of refraining from eating. Fasting, when embraced with intention, has the ability to reconnect us to our deepest spiritual selves and align us with the divine in a way that nothing else can. The power of fasting lies in its ability to create a profound shift within us. It strips away the distractions of the world, quiets the noise of our daily lives, and brings us into a place of stillness. It calls us to be present, to slow down, and to listen not just to the physical hunger in our bodies, but to the deeper hunger in our souls. In those moments of quiet, of self-discipline, we make space for something bigger than ourselves. We make room for God, for the divine presence that is always with us, waiting to be noticed, waiting to be heard. It is in this space that fasting reveals its true power. It is not just an act of denial, but an act of invitation. When we fast, we invite God into the very core of our being. We invite His love, His wisdom, His grace, and His guidance. In this intimate exchange, fasting becomes a bridge that connects the physical with the spiritual, the earthly with the divine. Through fasting, we acknowledge that while we may be sustained by food, our true nourishment comes from something far deeper, our relationship with God. Fasting teaches us that in order to grow spiritually, we must be willing to release what is familiar, what is comfortable, and what temporarily satisfies us so that we can make room for the eternal. It is a radical act of surrender, a commitment to put aside our own desires for something far more fulfilling. And it is in this surrender that the power of fasting truly becomes clear. It is in these sacred moments of quiet surrender that we open ourselves to God's presence in a way that transforms not only our relationship with Him, but also our relationship with ourselves and with others. The purpose of fasting goes far beyond the surface level of simply abstaining from food or other comforts. It is a deeply spiritual practice with the intention of realigning our hearts and minds with a higher calling. At its core, fasting is about discipline, sacrifice, and a conscious choice to shift our focus from the material world to the spiritual realm. In a society where instant gratification and convenience often dictate our actions, fasting serves as a reminder that true fulfillment does not come from the things we possess or consume, but from the connection we cultivate with the divine. When we fast, we are giving up something, whether it's food, certain habits, or distractions, not as a form of punishment, but as an intentional act of letting go. This act of surrender allows us to detach from the physical and material needs that usually dominate our lives, creating a space where we can reflect on what truly matters. It's a conscious recognition that our physical needs, important as they are, do not define us. By fasting, we acknowledge that our spirit and our connection to something greater must take precedence. It is in this self-denial that we gain clarity, focus, and a deeper understanding of our spiritual selves. The purpose of fasting is also to strengthen our inner resolve. It requires us to confront our weaknesses, our attachments, and the things that often pull us away from the higher truth. By choosing to fast, we actively engage in the practice of self-control and self-mastery. We learn to discipline our desires, not through repression, but through conscious choice. In this process, we find that fasting helps us not only resist temptations, but also reconnect with the power within ourselves, the power that allows us to choose what truly nourishes our soul and our spirit. Furthermore, fasting serves as a way to deepen our awareness of God's presence. When we intentionally quiet the distractions in our lives, we allow ourselves to be more attuned to the whispers of the divine. The physical hunger we experience during a fast is a tangible reminder of our dependence on something greater. It invites us to reflect on the nature of our reliance on God, reminding us that just as we need food to sustain our bodies, we need God's presence to nourish our souls. This shift in awareness can lead us to a more intimate and personal relationship with the divine, one that transcends ritual and moves into a deeper, more lived experience of spiritual connection. In addition to personal growth, fasting is an act of purification. It is a way of cleansing the body and the soul, clearing away the clutter that prevents us from seeing and experiencing life with clarity. As we eliminate distractions, we open ourselves up to receive divine insight and wisdom. Fasting creates an environment for transformation, allowing us to emerge with a renewed sense of purpose, a deeper sense of empathy, and a stronger, more focused connection to the divine source that sustains us. The purpose of fasting is to bring us back to the core of who we truly are. It is about moving beyond the surface level of our daily existence and reconnecting with our spiritual essence. In fasting, we are invited to step away from the world's constant pull and rediscover the peace, clarity, and divine love that has always been available to us. It is through this sacred act of fasting that we learn to live not just in the world, but in the presence of something greater than ourselves. Fasting, at its deepest level, is an act of humility, an acknowledgement of our limitations and our dependence on something greater than ourselves. In a world that constantly celebrates self-sufficiency and individual power, fasting serves as a powerful reminder that we are not in control of everything. We are vulnerable beings, constantly in need of support, sustenance, and guidance. When we fast, we consciously step away from our physical needs and desires, recognizing that we are not defined by what we consume or possess. This simple act of restraint, of saying no to something we may want or feel entitled to, is an expression of deep humility. In fasting, we embrace our humanity in its purest form, acknowledging that we are imperfect, dependent, and transient. The hunger we experience during a fast is a humbling reminder of our fragility. It is a visceral sign that we are not invincible or self-sustaining. The very act of surrendering to hunger or discomfort is a recognition that our bodies are temporary and we are reliant on the divine to provide what we truly need, both physically and spiritually. Fasting also invites us to give up our egos. When we fast, we remove ourselves from the pursuit of indulgence and pleasure, stepping away from the illusion that we must constantly be gratified to be whole. It's a rejection of the societal norm that often equates satisfaction with success. In fasting, we become aware of how much we are driven by external stimuli, food, entertainment, convenience, and we make the conscious decision to focus on something greater. By doing so, we humble ourselves before the vastness of life, recognizing that satisfaction cannot be found in the fleeting pleasures of the world, but in the eternal presence of God. Moreover, fasting humbles us by putting us in touch with the less fortunate. As we voluntarily deny ourselves food, we are reminded of those who experience hunger not by choice but out of necessity. This awareness opens our hearts and minds to the struggles of others, cultivating a spirit of compassion and empathy. Fasting connects us to the global human experience and helps us see beyond our own needs. In our moments of hunger, we can remember those who face this reality every single day, and this understanding fosters humility. It is in fasting that we also realize how often we take the simplest things for granted. We are reminded of the grace that sustains us, grace that we need neither earn nor deserve, but which is given freely to us. The very ability to choose to fast is a gift, and in choosing to surrender to it, we acknowledge the generosity of life, of the divine, and of the countless blessings that surround us. It's an invitation to strip away the excess, to clear away the distractions, and to open ourselves up to the truth that we are sustained by something far greater than our own willpower. Finally, fasting humbles us by reminding us of our need for spiritual nourishment. While we may be able to live without food for a time, we cannot survive without the sustenance that comes from a connection to the divine. In fasting, we learn to prioritize what feeds our souls over what satisfies our temporary desires. It teaches us that true strength comes not from our ability to control our bodies, but from our willingness to surrender to a higher power, to trust that we are cared for and provided for in ways we cannot always see. Through fasting, we are invited to step into a place of humility, not as a sign of weakness, but as an acknowledgement of our interconnectedness with all of life, with the divine, and with one another. It is through this act of humility that we learn to open ourselves up to something greater than we could ever imagine, finding peace in surrender and strength in vulnerability. Fasting has the remarkable ability to create a profound shift in our awareness, drawing us closer to the divine and helping us experience God's presence in ways that might otherwise go unnoticed. When we engage in fasting, we remove the external distractions that constantly vie for our attention, and in doing so, we open up a space in our hearts and minds for something deeper. The act of fasting invites us to step away from the noise of the world and reconnect with the stillness that resides within, where God's presence is always waiting to be felt. As we refrain from indulging in the comforts we often rely on, whether it's food, technology, or other distractions, our minds begin to quiet. The physical hunger we experience serves as a reminder that we are not self-sustaining. We are dependent on a higher power, a divine source that sustains us at every moment. This recognition heightens our awareness of the divine presence that is always there, even in our everyday routines. Fasting creates an environment where we can hear God's voice more clearly, where we become more attuned to the whispers of the Spirit that might otherwise be drowned out by the busyness of life. In these moments of stillness, fasting deepens our awareness of the sacredness that surrounds us. We begin to notice the small miracles in our daily lives, the way the sunlight pours through the window in the morning, the comfort of a kind word, the beauty in nature. These are not mere coincidences, they are the subtle ways in which God makes himself known to us. When we fast, we are able to see the world with clearer eyes, recognizing that all of creation is imbued with the divine. Our awareness of God's presence grows stronger, and we find ourselves more attuned to the love and grace that flows through every moment, every breath, and every interaction. Moreover, fasting invites us into a deeper sense of intimacy with God. It is in the moments of hunger or discomfort that we become more reliant on God, more aware of our need for his strength and guidance. As we acknowledge our vulnerabilities, whether physical or emotional, we turn to God for the strength to endure. This creates a deeper bond, a spiritual connection that goes beyond mere ritual. We are no longer merely going through the motions, we are actively engaging with the divine, recognizing God not just as a distant figure, but as a presence that is here within us and around us. Fasting also brings a heightened sense of gratitude. When we deny ourselves something, we begin to truly appreciate the blessings we have often taken for granted. Our focus shifts from what we lack to what we have, and in that shift we encounter God's goodness in abundance. Fasting opens our hearts to gratitude for the simplest of things, our breath, our life, the food we are able to enjoy when the fast is over, and the love that sustains us. In these moments, we realize that everything we have, everything we are, is a gift from God. It is through fasting that we come to understand that God's presence is not something we have to search for. It is already here within us and all around us. We don't need to go far to find Him. Fasting helps us quiet the mind and turn inward, where we discover that God has always been with us, waiting for us to stop, listen, and open our hearts to Him. The distractions that we allow to dominate our lives, our desires, our ambitions, our daily worries often prevent us from recognizing His constant presence. But when we fast, we intentionally create the space to be still, to sit in silence, and to experience the divine that is always available to us. In this deepened awareness, we learn to trust in God's timing, to lean into His presence, and to rest in the assurance that we are not alone. The more we fast, the more we realize that fasting is not just about abstaining from food or pleasure. It is about seeking, discovering, and embracing the deep, unshakable presence of God in every moment. It is about attuning ourselves to the divine rhythm of life so that we can experience the fullness of God's love, peace, and grace. Fasting, in its most profound sense, becomes a sacred act of alignment with the divine, a way of opening our hearts to the constant flow of God's presence that surrounds us at all times. Fasting has the remarkable ability to open our hearts in ways we may not initially anticipate. While many view fasting as a personal practice, a way of deepening our relationship with God, it also has the power to cultivate compassion and empathy toward others. When we choose to fast, we step into a space of awareness where we not only reflect on our own spiritual needs, but also become acutely aware of the struggles faced by those around us. It is through this heightened awareness that our hearts expand to embrace the suffering, the loneliness, and the hunger of others in a way that brings us closer to them. When we fast, we momentarily experience hunger, a natural and humbling sensation that reminds us of our dependence on food for sustenance. This physical discomfort becomes an entry point for compassion. In that moment, we cannot help but remember the millions who go without food, not by choice, but because they have no access to it. As our bodies experience this longing for nourishment, our hearts begin to recognize the deep suffering of those who are truly hungry, those for whom this experience is a daily reality, not a temporary sacrifice. Fasting opens our hearts by making us aware of the inequalities in the world and allows us to tap into a deeper level of empathy for others' struggles. Moreover, fasting fosters a sense of shared humanity. By willingly choosing to give up something that sustains us, we break down the walls of individualism and self-centeredness that often separate us from the experiences of others. We recognize that just as we have our own needs and desires, so too do those around us, and sometimes those needs are not being met. This realization stirs within us a desire to act, to reach out, and to help those who are suffering. Fasting is an invitation to step outside of our own comfort zone and see the world through the eyes of others, to feel their pain, their fear, and their longing for something better. It makes us more human by showing us how connected we all are. In this space of vulnerability, fasting also encourages us to become more attuned to the spiritual hunger that exists in the world. Hunger is not only physical, it is also emotional and spiritual. There are so many who long for connection, understanding, and love, yet find themselves isolated or disconnected. By fasting, we recognize that just as people need food to sustain their bodies, they also need love, compassion, and kindness to sustain their souls. In fasting, we allow ourselves to be sensitive to the emotional and spiritual needs of those around us, and this awareness moves us to act with greater kindness and generosity. We realize that offering a kind word, a gesture of support, or simply being present for someone can be as nourishing as a meal. Fasting also fosters a sense of humility that is essential for cultivating true compassion. As we experience our own hunger or discomfort, we are reminded of how fleeting and fragile our lives are. We become more aware of our dependence on others and on God for everything we have. This humility is a catalyst for compassion, as it allows us to see the worth and dignity of every person, regardless of their circumstances. We begin to realize that we are all in this together, that no one should have to suffer alone, and that every human life deserves respect, care, and love. This deeper sense of compassion is not limited to people who are physically hungry. Fasting has the power to shift our perception of the world, opening our hearts to the suffering of others in all its forms. Whether it's the emotional pain of a friend, the injustice faced by those oppressed, or the struggles of those dealing with illness, fasting helps us recognize and connect with the burdens others carry. It strengthens our resolve to act in love, not just in moments of abundance, but especially when we see others in need. By fasting, we are invited to live more consciously and intentionally, creating a space within ourselves where compassion can flourish. When we fast, we open ourselves to the reality that we are not here merely for ourselves, we are here to serve, to give, to share in the pain and joy of others. We begin to see that by fasting, we don't just experience God's presence more deeply, but we also become instruments of His love and mercy to others. The more we embrace fasting as a means of opening our hearts to compassion, the more we discover that the practice of fasting is never just about us, it is always about others, and in this way it transforms our relationships, our communities, and the world around us. The reward of fasting is not just a fleeting or superficial benefit, but a deep, transformative experience that touches every aspect of our being spiritually, emotionally, and even physically. While many may approach fasting with the expectation of seeing immediate results, its true rewards often reveal themselves in the form of a gradual, profound shift that leads to lasting change. These rewards are not always visible in the way we might expect, but they are felt deeply in our hearts and souls, as fasting has the power to align us with a higher purpose, restore our inner peace, and open us to greater clarity and understanding. One of the most significant rewards of fasting is the deep sense of spiritual renewal it brings. When we fast, we intentionally strip away the distractions that often cloud our minds and hearts. This process of self-denial and sacrifice clears space for God's presence to enter more fully into our lives. In this stillness, we are able to reconnect with our spiritual selves and grow in our understanding of the divine. The reward is not found in what we are giving up, but in what we gain: a renewed sense of purpose, an enhanced awareness of God's love, and a deeper sense of connection to something greater than ourselves. It is through this spiritual awakening that fasting helps us draw closer to God, strengthening our relationship with Him in ways that bring peace, joy, and fulfillment. Beyond spiritual renewal, fasting offers the reward of mental and emotional clarity. In the quiet that comes with fasting, our minds are able to slow down and become more focused. The distractions of daily life, the noise of constant stimulation, and the endless demands of the world fade into the background, allowing us to gain insight into our true thoughts, feelings, and desires. Fasting helps us let go of unnecessary clutter, both physical and mental, and gives us the opportunity to assess our lives with fresh eyes. We may find that certain fears, anxieties, or habits that once seemed overpowering become easier to manage when we have taken the time to step back and recalibrate. This newfound clarity allows us to approach life with a more grounded and purposeful outlook, helping us make decisions that align with our deepest values and spiritual truths. Moreover, fasting brings the reward of self-discipline and personal growth. The very act of choosing to fast requires us to exercise control over our desires and impulses. This builds resilience and strengthens our willpower, not just in moments of fasting, but in all aspects of life. By learning to say no to temporary pleasures, we become more aware of our attachments and the things that may be controlling us. As we gain mastery over our immediate desires, we become better equipped to make choices that support our long-term well-being. The reward here is not just the ability to endure physical hunger or discomfort, but the inner strength to face challenges with grace and perseverance, and to live more intentionally aligned with our highest self. Another significant reward of fasting is the deepened sense of empathy and compassion it fosters. When we experience hunger or deprivation, even in a temporary and voluntary way, we are reminded of the suffering of others who live with these conditions daily. Fasting opens our hearts to the reality of poverty, hunger, and hardship, helping us develop a more compassionate outlook on life. This shift in perspective encourages us to take action, whether it's through donating to those in need, offering support to someone struggling, or simply being more present with those around us. The reward here is not just a heightened sense of empathy, but a call to serve and uplift others, to live with greater kindness and love, and to make the world a better place through our actions. Fasting also brings the reward of gratitude. When we remove ourselves from the comforts and conveniences we often take for granted, we come to appreciate them in new ways. Fasting makes us more mindful of the simple gifts in life, like the nourishment we receive, the relationships we cherish, and the moments of joy that brighten our days. It teaches us to find beauty in the ordinary and to acknowledge the abundance that already surrounds us. The reward of gratitude transforms our mindset from one of scarcity to one of abundance, helping us to see life through a lens of appreciation and thankfulness for all that we have. Lastly, fasting offers the ultimate reward of inner peace. As we relinquish control over our physical cravings, we begin to realize that peace does not come from external sources, but from within. Fasting helps us quiet the inner turmoil that often arises from unexamined desires and attachments. By focusing on our spiritual needs and seeking alignment with the divine, we find a sense of calm that transcends external circumstances. This inner peace becomes a lasting reward, one that stays with us long after the fast has ended, enabling us to approach life's challenges with equanimity and grace. The reward of fasting is a holistic transformation, one that touches our spirit, our mind, our heart, and our body. It is a journey that leads us closer to our truest selves, to God, and to a life of greater meaning, compassion, and clarity. The rewards of fasting may not always be immediate or tangible, but they are deep, lasting, and life-changing. Through fasting, we are invited into a sacred process of renewal, growth, and healing that leaves us forever changed. In conclusion, fasting is far more than just a practice of abstaining from food or earthly pleasures. It is a powerful spiritual tool that deepens our connection with God, enhances our awareness of others, and brings profound transformation to our hearts and minds. Through fasting, we experience the humbling gift of self-discipline, the beauty of compassion, and the inner peace that comes from realigning ourselves with a higher purpose. It opens our hearts to God's presence, teaches us to value the simple blessings in life, and empowers us to live with greater empathy and gratitude. The rewards of fasting are not always immediate or visible, but they are deeply transformative, guiding us toward a life of greater clarity, purpose, and spiritual fulfillment. As we embrace fasting, we embark on a journey that not only strengthens our connection with the divine, but also enriches our relationships with others, making the world around us a little brighter, kinder, and more compassionate. Ultimately, fasting is an invitation, a sacred opportunity to discover the deep and lasting rewards that lie within and to grow closer to the love and peace that God offers us every day.